Mayor Robertson, I do show 1:30.
With that, we will open our Selma City Council special meeting. Want to thank everyone for showing up today on Friday, November 12th, a Friday afternoon at 1:30, no less. And today we are broadcasting via Zoom as well as the phone teleconference phone number 1301-715-8592. The webinar ID is 871-9566-9513. Would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Guerra,
Here.
Councilmember Mendoza Navarro. Here. Councilmember Trujillo.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Cho. Here. Mayor Robertson.
Here. Potential conflicts of interest. Any council member who has a potential conflict of interest may now identify the item and recuse themselves from discussing or voting on the matter. Oral communications. At this time, any member of the public may address the city council regarding any item on the special meeting agenda over which the council has jurisdiction. No action or discussion will be taken on any item not on the agenda. Issues raised will be referred to the city manager for review. Members of the public shall limit their remarks to 3 minutes. Does anyone have any oral communications at this time? Okay, with that, we will, okay. Step up.
Evening, Mr. Mayor, I just want to say, could you turn your mic on? It's difficult to hear you.
Okay. Yeah, it's on. We start over? No, I'm kidding. So with that, we'll move on to our city council workshop session. This is going to be a public workshop to discuss city growth and development, council direction regarding the same. Since we have so many distinguished members of our community today, in our development community, I thought we would all introduce ourselves. We will start with our council, move on to the staff, and then the microphone will be passed around to each of you to introduce yourself and where you're from today. We'll start with our interim city manager.
Ralph Jimenez, interim city manager. John Trujillo, District 1 representative.
Rev Cho, Mayor Pro Tem, District 4.
Scott Robertson, mayor.
Sarah Guerra, council member.
Blanca Mendoza Navarro, Council Member.
Mary Lerner, city attorney.
Fernando Santillan, Deputy City Manager.
Steve Brandt, Principal Planner with QK.
Bill Romero with Yamabe and Horn Engineering, interim city engineer.
Annalisa Perea, Senior Planner with QK, Contract City Planner.
Wes Carlson, Deputy City Attorney.
Great. With that, could we pass the microphone, starting in the front row there and working our way across the room?
David Padilla, Branch Chief, Caltrans.
Baldev Johnson, Selma City resident and business owner, Arco MPM.
Thank you.
Timothy Jones, owner, developer, Selma Crossings.
By Fresno LAFCO. Jatinder Singh, developer.
Alan Williams, AW Engineering.
Rav Singh, Selma resident.
Tony Bourne, Fresno Council of Governments.
George Azunian, Azunian Properties in Visalia.
Rick Telligan with Third Millennium Investments.
Ben Munoz, SKF.
Veronica Cáceres, SKF.
Dwight Nelson, Nelson Properties, Selma.
Parminder Singh, Realtor.
Tracy Tosta, Administrative Analyst for the City of Selma.
Daniel Bond, Gateway Engineering.
Elijah Hilliard, KB Home.
Rose Robertson's mayor's other half, downtown business owner. Ramza Corey, RPS Real Estate.
Corbin Raven, Raven Custom Homes.
Anthony Rivas, Fire Marshal, City of Selma.
Efrain Yanis, Yanis Construction.
Caitlin Underwood, Giannis Construction.
Tim Spate, Yanis Construction.
Nick Sahota, Central Valley Engineering and Surveying, Selma.
Meyer Campa, representative for Senator Hurtado.
Bernard Jimenez, Fresno County.
Lift Italian, Selma Development Partners.
Jerry Farney, Selma Development Partners.
Greg Garcia, member of the Planning Commission.
Danny Surimian, property owner and citizen of Selma.
Okay, and do we have anyone on Zoom today that's attending?
Mayor Robertson, I'm going to go down the list and we will start with those that have their hands raised. I saw first one.
Eric Vonberg with Rincon Consultants.
There.
Hi, Michael. Your line is open. Can you unmute your line?
Can you hear me now?
Perfectly.
All right, Michael Kazarian, property owner.
Hi, caller ending in 082. Your line is open. Would you like to state your name? Caller ending in 727. Your line is open. Would you like to state your name? As a reminder, you can use *6 to unmute your line.
Scott Farney, Farney Automotive Group.
Caller ending in 832, your line is open. As a reminder, you can use *6 to unmute your line. Hi, Arakel, your line is open.
Arakel Arisian Group, Land Use Consultant.
Hi, Edgar, your line is open.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Edgar Hernandez, Caltrans District 6. Thank you. Hello, everyone.
Hi, Erica, your line is open. Would you like to introduce yourself to everyone?
Hi, good afternoon. Erica Cabrera, Local Public Affairs, PG&E.
Thank you. To the Hensley Group, your line is open. Would you like to introduce yourself to everyone?
Yes, I'm Floyd Hinesley, and we have Hinesley Homes in Bakersfield, and I'm in Arroyo Grande. Can you push the unmute button?
Yes, I did. Here, go ahead. I pushed the unmute button.
Yes, hello, I'm sorry. I'm Floyd Hinesley with Hinesley Homes in Bakersfield and Arroyo Grande. We build throughout the Central Valley. Nice to be here and nice to be invited. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, Rosanna, your line is open. Would you like to introduce yourself to everyone? Just gonna open everyone's line, and whoever feels comfortable introducing themselves, please feel free to do so.
Hello, this is Zach Gomes with KB Home, and appreciate being invited to the meeting.
Can you hear me?
Perfectly.
Okay. John Katumian with JK Construction with Floyd Hinesley's group.
Okay, I have everyone's line open. If anyone else would like to introduce themselves, please feel free. Otherwise, I will close all the lines and at the appropriate moment, reopen them. Thank you. As a reminder, please use *9 to raise your virtual hand, or if you're using the Zoom application, please raise your virtual hand. Otherwise, if you're calling in by phone, please use *9. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, City Clerk. With that, we'll turn the meeting over to our interim city manager in minutes.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to just make a couple of brief introductory comments and then turn it over to Fernando Santillan, our Deputy City Manager. The meeting here today is really the beginning of what will be probably 2 or 3 more workshops focused on this particular topic of growth in Selma and development. Staff is really anticipating 2 significant outcomes from this process. The first outcome would be to obtain input from the community, from developers, from stakeholders, as a precursor to updating our general plan and our zoning ordinance, which will probably start next year. So this is the beginning process to start to get some input. The second objective would be to identify priority initiatives that currently comply with the general plan, and then to prioritize those initiatives and establish some kind of an action plan related to them. There are several factors influencing the need to have this forum, and I'm going to just read a couple of them. The first one is that there's been an increased interest among developers and property owners to bring forth residential, commercial, and industrial projects within the Selma sphere of influence. Since I've been here over the last 5 months, Fernando, the Deputy City Manager, and I have been meeting with developers almost on a weekly basis regarding interest in moving projects in the city of Selma. And those projects, as I mentioned, include not only residential, but commercial and industrial projects as well. Then the second factor influencing the reason to meet is the city's interest in effective and organized development and growth within the city of Selma, consistent with our general plan. Another priority factor influencing the reason to meet is the lack of sufficient residential units within the city of Selma. That is, seems to be a priority right now with based on demographic growth figures. And of course, we anxiously await the latest census data, but indication is that we are lacking sufficient inventory in the community in terms of residential usage. Another critical factor that would influence the reason to meet is our infrastructure challenges. We do have, and we've known this for several decades now, we do have some infrastructure challenges, and that's one of the motivating factors behind our meeting today. Traffic circulation is also another factor why we're meeting today to discuss this, the issue which corresponds with our general plan. The issue of traffic circulation, movement of traffic, either internally or externally around the city of Selma, is very, very important to us. The issue of parks and green space is also a critical factor that causes us to want to meet. And of course, economic development. We are at a point now where, you know, we have receiving input and interest in economic development, and we need to, that corresponds with our discussion about expansion of commercial space here in the city of Selma. And the last factor, and certainly not the least factor, is our city staffing levels. Right now, we are looking at a situation where our staffing configurations are, with our staffing configuration, we're struggling to meet the business requests from the business community and development community to move projects along. So, but it not only staffing within our planning and development department, but of course, as we grow, then that would influence our staffing with respect to other departments like public works and our public safety departments as well. So those are the factors that really have come together to influence this forum that we are undertaking. And like I said, this is going to be the first of probably 2 or 3 more forums like this where we can share information with the council, receive information from the community, especially the development community, and look for direction from the council in terms of priority projects. That stated, I'll go ahead and turn this over to Fernando. We do have a a very ambitious agenda today, but hopefully we can get through it as quickly as we can. Thank you.
Thank you, Ralph. Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. It's a pleasure to be here today. And I just want to say thank you to everyone in attendance today. It's great to see such a high turnout, and it indicates a level of interest from our development community, from our stakeholders in Selma. And this meeting is really, it's been building up over the last few months as Ralph and I have been meeting with several members of the community, many of whom are here. And I'm just very appreciative that you've taken the time out of your day to come and share your ideas, give your input, so that the city council and staff can really, truly understand what it is that the community wants to see Selma become. So with that said, I'll go ahead and begin my presentation. And really, the presentation will follow roughly the agenda that you have in front of you. And if you haven't grabbed the handouts that are at the table over here to my right, feel free to do that, but we'll have many of those graphics and text available on the screen so that you can follow along. So to kind of set the table for this discussion, we have, as staff, been processing various projects that are in various levels of progress and development within the city. And I'll go a little bit more into detail about which of these projects are at which stage, but from just an overview, one of the biggest projects right now, Amberwood Phase 1, just received approval from LAFCO for an annexation, and that includes 270 homes over on the east side of town. We've got Vineyard Estates, we've got Niagara Estates, Track 6019 over on Dainuba, Thompson area from the Raven family. We've got a couple of developments, including Mr. Josan's and Mr. Singh's projects over on Nebraska and Highway 43, Highland Avenue. Mr. Nick Sahota, who's also here, has a project, Casa de Villa, which is a multifamily project on Nebraska. We have McCall Estates, which is a little bit longer term project due to the annexation and sphere of influence amendment that we're looking to do for that project, but that is going to be in the neighborhood of 70 single family residential units, 70 or 80. And then we also have a project over at Saginaw, Highway 43, Mr. Gill's project that is also in the annexation process. So I'm going to go a little bit into more detail with this graphic here. And just to give the council and the folks in attendance, both on Zoom and in person, a visual representation of where our growth is happening at the moment, where the interest is to grow Selma. And I'll start here on the north side of Selma, and you'll see this pink area here. That is the track 6019. That's the Raven development, and that's going to include eventually 315 single family homes, including park space, and we'll talk about park space today as well. Moving over to the east side of town, I talked about Amberwood, this blue area over here. That represents Phase 1 and Phase 2. Only Phase 1 is currently approved for development under the approved subdivision map. And that's going to be 270 single family homes, as I mentioned. If we head down to the south area of town, we can see various projects that are indicated there. We have McCall Avenue Estates, which is this brownish project there. We have another couple of projects in the Thompson and Blaine area. Mr. Yanez, who's here as well, Yanez Construction is looking at doing a project which will entail about 100 single family homes. We have some projects over on the Saginaw side, including Mr. Gill's development, some which will include annexation and sphere of influence expansions. And then we move over to the west side. Further to the west, we have Mr. Josan's project and Mr. Hinesley's project over on the west side of Highland Avenue, which will include, it's a true mixed use project, commercial, single family. There's plans to include senior living, green space, parks, single family residential, multifamily, just a really good diversification of types of dwelling units out there. And then as part of that annexation, we'll bring other undeveloped parcels into the city limits. And then on the northeast side, that red area, we have Mr. Singh's project, which includes both commercial and multifamily. We're looking at about 140-ish multifamily units there with about 6 commercial lots. That's still that's in process and moving along. So, and then of course towards Floral on the west side of town, we also have the Selma Grove development. We have the Hilton Hampton Inn project, which is currently under construction. And then we have Mr. Cliff Tillion's plans to build out the rest of Selma Grove as a commercial development out there. And then it's not indicated in this map, but we do have the city's development, which will be Rockwell Park Pond, which we are currently working on in the design phase of that project. So quite a bit happening in Selma, as you can see. So the interest is there. The investment is there from the development community. And it's just a matter of the city council and staff and the stakeholders involved of taking a good look at the challenges that we face in moving these projects along, mostly concerning infrastructure, circulation, and some of the other issues that are listed on the agenda, but we'll get further into those as the presentation progresses. So in order to effectively process these applications that are coming in, it's been necessary for staff to take a look at our processes and identify areas of improvement that will allow us to effectively and efficiently, most efficiently process and move these projects along. You know, as Ralph mentioned, we are understaffed in various key departments of City Hall, but it is also important to, you know, be efficient with the staff that we do have. One of those initiatives that we've launched is a public online permitting portal, which we are in the process of implementing. We should have it launched if the council approves our vendor OpenGov at the next within the next 2 city council meetings. We should have that launched by spring or summer of 2022. And so that's going to be really helpful for us, not just to the public, but as staff, because we'll be able to manage the workflow much more efficiently for these permits that are coming in. Payments will be online, applications will be online. The routing of the applications will be automated and will be much more efficient. So we're really hopeful that that's going to help solve a lot of the problems that we've seen over the last few years, where, you know, there's a breakdown in communication and lack of follow-up between departments on certain things. But again, all of that is predicated on the need for additional staff and the right folks in key areas within the community development department. The other item that we have there is a zoning ordinance update, which Rincon Consultants and QK are both helping us with. We, as many of you know, our zoning ordinance is not optimal, to say the least. And it's often very confusing for folks who are looking to start projects, to start businesses, to really understand where in town they can start these projects. And, you know, it's a drain on city resources to have to try to explain, because sometimes it's hard for us to even decipher what's in our current zoning ordinance. But we're very hopeful that, you know, with Mintier Harnish, with QK, with Rincon, helping us take a good look at a zoning ordinance update, that we'll be able to streamline that language. We're looking at a product called Open Counter Zoning Check, which will essentially, it'll be an online system so people can go online and, let's say I want to start a barbershop. I type in barbershop and it shows me where in town I can start that business. And as I start answering questions about my hours of operation, you know, other uses within that barbershop, it kind of narrows down the geographic locations based on our zoning ordinance. So, you know, that's really going to save us a lot of time in terms of fielding phone calls and email inquiries as to where certain types of businesses can operate. And then one of the things I'm really excited about is the GIS system, which I've talked about extensively with the council. But you know, I'll share an example here. Let me. So the goal with the GIS system, and this happens to be City of Selma, Texas, but they have a GIS system which is very similar to what we are looking to do. You'll be able, as the public, to go to this map online and select a list of layers that you can then modify, well, not modify, but kind of hide and make visible to be able to identify what infrastructure is located where. The goal of this is to really make it much more streamlined and easy for developers and property owners to identify where the infrastructure is that's going to affect the cost of my development. You know, if I'm looking at stormwater infrastructure and if I need to have an on-site basin and things like that, this type of system will be able to help you identify those issues early on in the process to help you with your own planning initiatives for your project. So we're really excited about that. We received the grant from Fresno COG through the REAP program, and we're in the process of implementing that with our city engineer. So we're hopeful to have that launched hopefully within the next 6 months or so. Back to my presentation here. So, and besides those process improvements, we've also reconfigured the community development department and other departments and consolidated them into a single department that includes planning, building, engineering, economic development, public works, which all reports to a single deputy city manager. The purpose of this was to improve interdepartmental communication, to facilitate collaboration, and really to get interaction going between the different departments, you know, when they're talking about general plans, infrastructure, master plans, specific plans, so that we get all the perspectives that we need in the same room when we're launching these initiatives and moving these projects forward. So one of the main things that we'll be discussing today, and this is just a broad overview, we'll go into each of these topics with more specifics, but as many of you know who are doing projects in town, we have significant challenges, many of which stem from infrastructure such as sewer. We have circulation and traffic impacts that we have to address. Philip, our city engineer, will talk about stormwater drainage infrastructure. We have a general plan that is very comprehensive, but there are certain portions of it that I think have that need to be looked at to be updated or brought back up to speed with the desires of the community. And we can talk about that a little bit more. We have park space needs that there's certain parts of town that really could use some park space within walking distance. And we've heard that many times from the community. We've had some state housing mandates, some legislation that has come down from Sacramento that is going to change the landscape of what we can and cannot approve in terms of, you know, housing projects and affordable housing and things like that, which QK Steve Brandt will address in his portion of the presentation. And then we'll talk about a little bit about the regional housing needs assessment, which is basically our target for housing units that we have over the next 20 or so years. And then we'll talk about potential funding options, one of them being Enhanced Infrastructure Financing District, EIFD, which the City of Selma is not currently eligible for, but we'll talk about what that means. And then school capacity, I don't believe we have a representative from the school district right now present, but this is a conversation that's going to take place over the next few months with Selma Unified in terms of, you know, as development occurs throughout town, where is the best location for new facilities if the school district is looking at that. And then obviously city staffing levels, which we've touched on a couple of times already. So we'll get into that as well. Any questions so far from the council or from the public about any of this? Great. So I'm gonna pass it over to SKF. I'd like to introduce Ben Munoz, who's the Executive Director of SKF, Selma Kingsburg Fowler Sanitation District, as well as Veronica Casares, who is the engineer for the district.
Thank you. Is this one on? Okay. Is it on? Okay. Thank you, Mayor and Council. I'm excited to be here. This is a good process. I'm glad that Selma's taking this direction. I've been, every time a new city manager comes on board, any of the cities that we serve, I make a connection with them and kind of explain our relationship with the cities that we serve and try to get a good understanding and why it's important for us to coordinate and communicate our infrastructure that SKF maintains and operates and Ralph and Fernando have done a great job. We've had several meetings, part of coming up with bringing this workshop to the council and to the developers. We've also talked about some of our policies and procedures that we have in place. How can we improve in those? Because a lot of times we'll have developers come to the city and then things go in a certain direction. And then we hear about them and then we're having to catch up. So we have worked some of those details out. We've also discussed our tools that we have that we developed in 2006, our first sewer master plan. And then in 2016, we improved that master plan. And part of that master plan was all the city staff, city managers were involved in several meetings, about a year and a half, to come up so the district could get a good idea of what the city's ideas of growth is. So we can be prepared to help and assist in developing in those. I have 42 years of economic development, and I always get excited when I'm able to bring in the district and work closely with the city staff and accomplish that. So again, I thank the council for inviting SKF and your staff. And I also reported this to the board of directors, SKF board of directors. And they like that we are part of this whole process. And I want to say this is a great process. Our relationship with the city is that we operate and maintain the sewer system. We collect monies. There are several ways we collect. We collect a Selma fund, which we maintain the existing facilities. And then we get expansion funds, which we get for district facilities. We have some lift stations that are the districts and some lift stations that are Selma infrastructure. So we're part of that whole thing. So Selma is very unique from all the cities we serve because as I've been to the council many times and explained that your infill, what you have there, and Veronica's going to get into those details and what the challenges are for expanding. And again, the expansion part of it is it's the city working with developers and us, this district, and setting the standards of being able to provide zona benefits. So we're not ending up with the same situation we did 20, 40 years ago when the city of Selma was developed. And again, I have very expanded knowledge of that and how that goes. So we're talking to your staff. We do have a sewer master plan that is very flexible. It's not set in stone. So we always try to sit down with the city staff and developers to explain what those challenges are and what our alternatives are, and try to work through those details. And again, that is very important. It's a two-way street with city staff and us, and so that's going to be a very helpful tool for all of us. So we do have a lot of detail to go over, as we said when I talked to Fernando and Ralph. But again, it's a good start. And again, with that, I'd like to have Veronica kind of take over the technical and kind of dive into that.
Good afternoon, Council. I think in terms of been talking for a little while about this. This is actually our second amendment to the Selma. It's actually our second amendment to the Selma plan. Like Ben said, this is a pretty fluid document. As you know, we listen to the city. If they have good ideas, we see if we can incorporate them in. And also, we too have been scheduling quite a few meetings with Fernando and ourselves and interested developers. So I'll give an overview. Stop me if I talk too fast, or if you have questions, Council, please let me know. As you can see here, I'm going to start on the west side. That's where we see start over. Yeah, there's a few red lines here, and these boxes are pump stations. This was where Selma Grove is at here, and then this is just outside of that. And this is the only area, oh, excuse me, and then down here. On the west side of the highway, this is the area that's entering existing collection system. So for the west side, particularly parcels that are developing in the Nebraska Highland area, they're going to go through the existing system. So we do have some upgrades here along Rose Avenue on the west side of the Highway 99 and Nebraska here. And that goes down to the frontage here. We have a line here needs to be upgraded. And then everything in blue is new sewers, as you can see. So the previous master plan had a smaller area entering this Nebraska line here. So now we've had to go in and kind of remaster plan this little area. So we have a parallel 10-inch here, a 15-inch here, and this is Nebraska and Mitchell, and then 18-inch on the frontage. Then areas south of town here, just outside the sphere, this is a new sewer line that ends up in a 21-inch avenue. And these are like long-term projects way out into the future here, these parallel lines here. All this area ends up into Rose and then the interceptor line, which goes here. That's the west side. Any questions on the west side? No? Okay, great. The north side of town, we did, along with the city, come up with a route down Dainuba to pick up everything north of Dainuba to Manning Avenue. So these are stubs going up to Manning to pick up Raven development, other development here. I believe this is the positive between McCall and Delray here. All goes into the Dainuba line. This is a new sewer that ties into the interceptor line here. And the interceptor line runs from Merced and Golden State all the way down to on the west, excuse me, east side, you have the Amberwood development, which are these colored parcels here. This we've changed a couple of times to make this project a little more developable for Amberwood. The most recent change was cutting it up a little bit more and having a 27-inch come down. I believe this is the Dockery alignment here. And then everything else to the east gets pushed down Saginaw into the interceptor line. These blue boxes here, those are new pump stations. So you see we have planned for pump station future here and here. This is probably a little more near term because it's part of what's kind of popping right now on the west side of town on Nebraska and Highland. And then this one is west of the Selma Grove project here. Long term for way on the east side, you have another pump station. Like I said, this document is fluid. It can change based on how the city wants to develop, what parcels are going to be more near term, what parcels are going to be more long. This is probably 2 times different than the 2035 plan we had. And we have talked ourselves as staff, any changes to the general plan will change this. So if we have denser development coming in, then this has to be relooked at again. Stay within our capacity requirements. We have to assure that. So being integral in those discussions on how general plan changes for SKF is very important. Any questions?
We would have, you know, the installation, the city would be responsible for funding the actual installation and SKF would be responsible for servicing the lines.
Correct.
Right, but you would suggest this to the city, these various pump stations. The one going into the west side is because of all the development that's going on there right now. You're saying that's the most urgent lift station that needs to be installed?
Yes, I would say, actually, I did leave a couple of things out. Thank you for reminding me, Mayor. This pump station here is Rose Avenue. It needs minor, I'll say minor flow requirements. Now, you have to remember, this is kind of a way up here, kind of look down. So I couldn't say, oh yeah, we can just put bigger pumps in there. I don't know right now. I just know that we need minor flow upgrades here. We need major flow grades here. This is Sunset. This one's going to be difficult, I know, because it sits in the middle of the road. And then Valley View needs minor flow improvements. And then there's a Clarkson pump station, which isn't on this map because it's 4 miles down here. That one's a major upgrade because that picks up everything that's here.
Councilman,
So,
I think Councilman Trillo had a
yeah, go ahead.
question.
Hi, Veronica. How you doing? Couple of questions. You said that you, this amendment is fluent, but you also said that you changed it and it's changed a couple of times. So a couple of years ago, when just because just for the developers can understand, a couple of years ago, we talked about some, I think it was photo, you were looking at our lines and seeing what our lines were.
Sure. Yes, we do have a televising program.
So that was part of our concern in seeing where our lines were at, what they were doing. And being that I was sat on the board with you guys, I found that we would instrument projects, right? The City of Selma and the Fowler would have projects, and this is what we're going to do this year, and then we move them to the next year. Some wouldn't get done, but you'd push them over to the following year, and then you push them over, right? So the question I have for that is in regards to that, under that conversation, so the developers can understand. There's 3 questions I have. Number one is, how you said that you guys find the best way, best avenue of a sewer line to go through the City of Selma. Are you guys the one that dictate where it goes or where it should go? And when I asked that, because you just stated that we are in charge of some of the lift stations and the actual installation of the sewer lines that we're actually putting in our city, which is a cost to our developer. Do we have any participation in that as a city? Do we have any participation with SKF pertaining to those lines? Because, I mean, we understand that SKF is a sole prop of its own representing the City of Selma. But we also have a developer that may say, hey, John, the cost for what SKF wants is $2 million more than what we kind of visually see, that maybe if we cross this way, it would be a little cheaper. So does the City of Selma have the opportunity to are they in play in the discussion when we do that?
Yeah, I could answer that. Yes, the city does that. And that's why it's very important we're having this conversation today.
But at what point do they have the discussion?
As soon as they hear of interest from a developer, their staff should be talking to SKF staff what the interest is, how is it served, how can we serve it? What are the ideas we have on the table? How can we make it better? And that is part of why we coordinate and communicate with city staff so they're on the same page as SKF. That way, when they go back to the developer, they have a better understanding of what needs to be said and done.
So does the city have the contact with the developer, or do you guys have the contact with it?
Usually the developer goes through the city, and then the city tells them that they got to connect with us, and then they connect. Sometimes we'll connect together depending on what the broad of the project is. Amberwood, we've been having discussions on that for over 10 years. And
the only reason why I asked this is because there has to be some clarification as to we understand that the City of Selma they have the right for the exposure of what the pipes we're going to be putting in with the sewer lines and stuff, but it has a big impact on, and what I understand from you is you're saying that there's lack of communication in the City of Selma, where we have to get a little more communicative to make sure that we have a little more of an idea where the cost factor of the city developer is going to go.
That's correct. And that's what we're trying to be transferable. We have tools in our master plan. We have stuff on the website where a developer could go in there. If you're residential, you have to take these steps. If you're a developer, you're developing a subdivision, take these steps. If you're a commercial industry. And those are the kind of tools we try to coordinate with the cities so they can research and have more of a transferable understanding of what that development, and particularly what area that development is going to take and need to be able to do that.
Thank you.
That's where our ongoing trying to improve and with the city staff, so they understand what the impacts to us and what our impact to the city is. and making sure that we're all in the same page. And that's part of this whole process and working with who you're in. And I think, like I said earlier, this is a great start to do that. And that's why I try to do that from the beginning when a new city manager comes, so they could understand what our relationship is. And it is a very unique relationship because, you know, we operate and maintain it, but yet it's Selma it owns it, and any development you're responsible. So it is a very hard, unique setup. Usually if you're, but in this case, we're special districts serve that need. So we are a partner to the city. We never, we always work with the cities, try to, we use our standards. We work with LAFCO on a lot of the things that we have to do. So we, when I say we, SKF and the staff are always right on top of things when it comes to questions from the city staff and developers.
Thank you.
Our priority.
And if I might add, Councilman Trujillo, and since I came on board, I think our relationship with SKF has been very positive. And just as an example of one of the ways that we've collaborated with SKF, recently Veronica and our planning staff sat down and we looked at every parcel that we have an application for in town. And we said, okay, how many housing units do these developments, how many ESFRs are being built as part of this development project? And so we sent that over to SKF because that helps them with their modeling and the determination of the sizing, and it also helps them develop costs that can be spread across the different developments. So I think our communication, and correct me if I'm wrong, Veronica, has been pretty good over the last few months. But I think we understand why it's so important for us when we get an application to let SKF know. And we've had, I don't know, numerous calls with different developers since I've been here, kind of so we can get on the same page and make sure that everyone understands what the scope of these improvements are going to be. But when it comes down to engineering and design, I think most of that is going to come from SKF.
Thank you, Fernando. Good questions from council. Thank you, John. Any more questions?
Let me just state that when I got elected, I did a request for a good meeting and we had about a 2.5-hour meeting. And I thank you, and I think her name was Cheryl. Was it Cheryl? Or who's the manager? Trisha.
Yes.
So thank you for that. That was really good.
We have a question from the audience. Come up or identify yourself, please.
Hello. Can you hear me? Okay. Andrew Leonardo with KB Home. Hi, Veronica. You had mentioned that if the density changes, that this plan could change. What density assumptions were made, and are there any plans in the
So the master plan is based on the current City of Selma general plan. Whatever's in there, that's how we came up with our flow coefficients and what the sizing of the sewers would be.
If density were moved in one location to another location, could that affect this plan?
Yes, it could. And I don't know which side. I'll give it. For example, I would say on the west side, I think we have that pretty locked in with projects that are kind of tributary to Highland in Nebraska. And I want to say, and Fernando can correct me if I'm wrong, the Amberwood project also is pretty locked in. So the changes that are potential out there are the Selma crossings down here, Grove, and then of course projects that are north of Dainuba. I'm not sure if that's going to be changing in the general plan because I think we kind of have a little heads up on in our discussions with
Yeah, some of these projects will require general plan amendments, and some of them will be increasing the density relative to what's currently in the general plan. But those changes have already been communicated to SKF, and I think they've incorporated them into kind of their modeling currently. So I think we're pretty well on top of that in terms of the current projects that we have now. But to your question, anything that comes in the future, we'll need to relook at that.
Thank you.
Quick question. Hi, Veronica.
Hello.
Long time no see.
Yeah, tell me about it.
You guys mentioned that this is available, if I'm a developer, if I want to go in and, you know, put my project in, I can see this mapping, or how is that mapping available?
This mapping here is
Or-
hot off the press, so it's still in
Okay.
draft form. So we have to wrap it up, and we'll get any comments from Fernando and company to do that. But we can post it to the website. Currently,
So I think my question is more like the I can never
CIS.
remember the CIS.
Yeah.
Is it like a live link?
No, this is actually will just be a PDF.
Okay, okay. Thank you.
Good question.
Yeah. Eventually, we're hoping to work with SKF to have some information in the GIS system with this information. Yeah.
Question for Fernando.
Yes.
So when a development comes in terms of housing and a lift station needs to be added to or built as a result, does the entire cost of that lift station, is it shouldered by the developer, or are there costs that are parceled out to other future developments?
That's a conversation that we have depending on the development. If we can foresee immediate additional development in addition to the project being proposed at the time, we try to spread that out. I've seen in other communities where, you have reimbursement agreements where if somebody does shoulder the cost up front, anybody else who benefits from those upgrades later on down the road is reimbursed through some mechanism. But it really is city policy that determines that. But right now, it's really whoever's building first is the one that pays.
Got it. Thank you.
If I can, Mayor, add to that. Yeah, that is one of the discussions we had in one of our meetings that we had with Fernando and Ralph. And one of my suggestions to that, and again, that's policy and that's the council's direction, is looking at revisiting your impact fees, because it is a share venture between the city and developer. And if you had a mechanism where you collect impact fees and you develop that, you can joint venture with developers and stuff. So that's one of the items that I think that Ralph and Fernando discussed. And so that would ease the pain in your economic development going in the future. So that is another item that'll be.
We have a comment, question? Would you step forward, or can he get the mic?
Louis Franco resident. I have a question for SKF. The blue lines you have here are proposed for future growth, correct? I don't know if I'm not reading the map correctly, but I don't see any blue lines around the Golden State Corridor going up toward Manning and toward Mountain View. Is that because the infrastructure in place is already capable of handling any future of Selma's growth in those directions?
That is a very good observation, because I actually it was yellow earlier, and that would be like a parallel line sometime in the future. So like I said, we just finished editing it. So there should be a yellow line here going this way, and then here indicating a future parallel line.
Yeah, because I know some, we have a lot of space in between in our sphere that eventually will be developed. We want to make sure as we're planning that we compensate for that as well.
Yeah, the interceptor line is a district,
thank you.
a district infrastructure. So that would be on the district to, make sure that we have capacity in there.
All right, thank you for that.
Well, thank you, council, and we look forward to continue work with your
Veronica, thank you, Ben. And if I could just wrap up the conversation about the sewer infrastructure, I do have a couple of more slides that I can bring up here. So we have in previous meetings that have taken place over the years, this graphic has been shown where it basically groups different areas of the city into specific projects for sewer, new sewer infrastructure construction. So we have the north side sewer that would address development north of Dainuba. We have the east sewer that would address development serving the Amberwood project, the west sewer over here on the west of the 99 Southwest. And then we have the northwest sewer, which would serve Rockwell and Selma Grove and the Hilton project. And I bring that up because obviously with that kind of development, there's significant costs that are associated with that. And so these costs that are on the screen at the moment are outdated costs. They were estimated as of 2019, but I wanted to present them to the council sort of as a refresher in terms of understanding the scope of what these costs are for the developers who are looking to build. For example, the North Side Sewer, which I think originally was going to go from Golden State to Amber, if I'm not mistaken. The cost at that point for the construction alone was 4.4 million, with the total capital cost, including design and engineering and all of that, of about 7 million. Certainly those costs have risen since 2019 because of the current environment. You know, we've had COVID, we've had inflated materials costs and high demand for those raw materials. But then we also look at the Northwest Sewer. That cost was around 3.6 million for construction. The West Sewer, almost $1,860,000. And then the East Sewer for Amberwood, which we are working with Amberwood, the developers right now, and SKF to rethink or take another look at the alignment to potentially reduce costs that would help the developer as they're implementing that infrastructure. So at that point in 2019, with the old alignment, it was about 4.6 million for the construction alone. So that'll give you a sense of what the costs are that these developers are facing. And certainly our sewer impact fees that we've accumulated over the years can help to offset some of these costs, but most of it is beyond the scope of what the city itself can provide. But it doesn't mean that we can't be creative in terms of, you know, potential agreements or reimbursement costs that to help offset the blow to these developments. So
That American Rescue Plan will help as well, though we do have a park and a fire station to build as well.
absolutely.
We have another comment? Mike, please.
I have a question, Ramza Corey with RPS Real Estate, and that's about basically the sewer infrastructure cost that every developer that comes to our town has to pay. We expect our developers to purchase the land, fix everything, roads, you know, undergrounds, all of that. On top of it, come up with millions of dollars to upgrade a sewer line to meet the needs, which a lot of times drive developers away. So homeowners in the city pay taxes, we pay sewer fees and all of that. Shouldn't there be a plan to avoid these issues in the future, to have some of that money that taxpayers, you know, are paying set aside for when a developer comes and want to add new homes to the city, where that money that was put in a bond, or I'm not sure how it would be, will be used by the city and SKF to improve the sewer line, instead of always relying on the developers to have to come up with that money. Because my understanding, that's one of the reasons all these projects get held up. And I could be wrong, but that's the feel I get, is that we don't have the sewer capacity. So it will benefit, I think, everybody in the long run if there is a way to allocate funds as we go, instead of letting basically the developer have to come up with all these funds. Thank you.
Well said.
So one of the other impacts that we talked about earlier is circulation and traffic impacts. We've invited today Tony Boren, the executive director for Fresno COG. Wanted to give him an opportunity to talk about the funding mechanisms at a regional level that are available to the city and to the other Fresno County communities. And then we also have David Padilla, who introduced himself earlier with Caltrans. He's a North Branch Chief. And so I wanted to bring Tony up if you're still available. Hi, Tony. Let me bring up your presentation. Give me one quick second.
Good afternoon, everyone. Tony Bourne, Executive Director, Fresno Council of Governments. Afternoon. I wanted to talk to you a little bit today. We're here to talk about circulation and some of the, I think all aware of the circulation challenges that Selma has. We'll speak to some of the projects, the different studies we funded here, jointly funded. Today, I'm really going to focus on funding and the funding that comes to Selma, because in the end, that's what But first chart I just put up there really just to illustrate the complexity of transportation funding. It's not ABC. There's many different funding sources, back fees, on and on, federal, state. All of that is how your funding gets to your city. I'm going to show you a slide here at the end, that actually shows you the money that you guys. So you can distill all of that down to basically 3 different funding streams, either federal, state, or local. Federal funds. So there are what are known as federal aid programs, right? These are formula allocations that come to the region. Some of the money we hand out directly to you guys on a formula basis, and others requires a competitive bid where each of our cities compete. Largest regional have available. Happened since Congress did away with the earmarks, right, where we used to go to our Congress. Grant programs, right? And so we all compete for grant funding at a national level. Now called the Build and the Infra program. Have been successful, but the odds are small, right? I hesitate to tell anyone to project on the idea that you're going to get a federal grant. I'd get it and it may help you, but there's transit side, you have FTA funds, right, which are really evidence for our urban transit provider, right? So most of that goes to Fresno area. That's your social service transit. Gas tax and excise gas tax. Next one, Transportation Development Act. This is funds transit-related programs, right? It was passed in the early primary components to it.
Tony, do you mind speaking into the microphone a little bit?
Sorry.
Thank you.
So the estimated annual funding that comes into our region, as you can see there, is $81 million, give or take, right? We talked about the HUDA funds and then the RIMRA, which is also the SB1. Again, the STA fund, we talked about those. This is pass-through funding that goes to our cities and counties through COG. I'll talk a little bit more about that. I might get to the one on a specific slide. State of good repair funding, again, transit funding that's used. Carbon Transit Operations Program. This there it gives us a little bit, but it's local side of things. So we have almost all of these major freeway interchange projects, a lot of our major rural. projects, there are always multiple. Out of that, I think proudly put our regional transportation. Oftentimes your federal projects, as part of Measure C, there is a regional transportation. Next slide. This is a slide from the city of Selma. I asked together a slide that I want you guys to see what you guys get. There to the left are the local streets and roads maintenance funding, right? You see talked about the STBG and the CMAC, right? The federal aid programs, that's the second 19%, right? Transit, the LTF, STA. The interesting thing about the transit is you see that LTF there. That is, it's an interesting funding source because when the state passed that back in the 70s, it was transit. Recognition that many regions at that point in time didn't have transit needs, so they put in a process that if you make a finding, then your operation, what's left over, you guys can. But if you follow what's happening with the state, there's a continuing. In my mind, at some point, they're going to come back and say, look, we're going to. Lastly, Measure C, you can see there, you about 5-6 years to go on that. We're working on a renewal right now. And that goes away. You can see there's 18%. Total almost 3.84 million. Okay, then next slide, please. So these are some of the competitive funding sources that are out there. This is the active transportation program. This funds bicycle and pedestrian projects, right? So to date, you guys have received $556,000 in ATP funding. Some of that was for your city's active transportation plan. Some was for a Safe Routes to School project. Just want to make you guys aware of that. Then we have the local partnership program, which takes place at a statewide level. But we were successful in receiving $7 million for the Golden State Boulevard project. So again, any money we bring from outside, that helps supplant the Measure C dollars, and those Measure C dollars can go to the next project on the list. There's also these last three programs that I identified there. STIP, that's basically our state allowance that we get every 2 years that we use in combination with Measure C to deliver our major projects. And then there's additional statewide programs there. So next slide. This will be my last slide. So this is just, I want to make everyone aware of the Measure C process and the importance of it. So right now we're in that process. You see there's a technical working group that's working on putting the draft together. This consists of all of the planning and public works officials, the interested transportation stakeholders, the public, and these are the people that sort of get under the hood, put the draft together. Then it will move to this executive committee, which is now up to 30 some odd members. But basically this is a committee made up of different stakeholders who are challenged with looking at the draft expenditure plan through their own particular lens, right? Many different stakeholders on that development community, on 30 some, lots of community-based organizations. So that process is underway. Hopefully here within the next 3 or 4 months, we'll have a draft expenditure plan for put it on the ballot, and then it would go to the voters in November 22. So that's the process. That's where we're at with it all. I'll stop right there, and I'm happy to answer any questions. I think David probably wants to speak about some of the projects that we were involved with. So
So Tony, thank you for that. And could you send the interim city manager your presentation so we can take a look at it? So we have it in the record. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. Hello, Mayor, members of the council. Fernando, thank you for inviting Caltrans. Yeah, I just wanted to add to Tony's presentation that we have participated in some feasibility studies, either paid through FCOG or partnership with other local agencies and Selma as well. One of them being the Dainuba feasibility study. And the reason why that was looked at is there was hopes to relieving Pearl Avenue interchange. But the conclusion of that study showed that it didn't have a huge impact to that. The other feasibility study that we prepared was the Mountain View feasibility. I don't have a presentation, so sorry. But that was done in, I believe, in 2019. The preferred alternative for that location was roundabouts at the ramps. So then recently, we just got the green light to do a low-level planning study for Floral Avenue interchange. Getting started on that here pretty soon. So, and our focus, Caltrans is, regionally, we get 25% of the regional transportation funds. So all of that is really focused on 99. So we try to help out as much as we can as far as the interchanges in ability studies and, offering our staff time to do those studies. Let's see. Oh, and then one thing I want to add too, just over the summer, Caltrans headquarters, we're looking for some pilot locations for their RAISE grant program. And the program looking to undo what practice of Caltrans doing back in the 70s and 80s, and that was just building the freeways through communities. So, here in the district, we looked at City of Selma, we've done feasibility studies already. So recognizing that Floral was a challenge, with connecting, 99, disconnecting the community from the west side of 99 to the east side. So we wrote up the application, sent that up to headquarters, and they got selected. So that went on to West DOT for consideration. You should have a decision here within that's planning study. And what they're looking at is transformative projects. So they're looking at ways of connecting the west side of, in this case, the west side of 99 and connecting it. Whether it's pedestrian, bicyclists, transit. So we're in hopes that does get awarded. So you should be.
And that's federal money?
Federal money, yes. So that can spur future raise.
They're looking at expanding green belts around these various cities.
Yep.
To enhance circulation, not necessarily horizontal, but vertical and circular.
Yes. Yep. And out of the whole entire state, Selma was selected, LA County, Ventura County, Colton. So they submitted those 5 locations to federal.
When will that decision be coming down?
It'll be here, from what I understand, this month. That was sent up this last July. So cross our fingers.
Please keep us posted.
Yes, definitely will.
And then just speaking of federal dollars, I know we got lots of presentations to go, but I don't want to hold things up. But for Tony Boren, the money, the infrastructure bill, will there be some federal money coming down on that through the county that the
yes.
cities might be receiving?
Yes, I think I read something on Tuesday. It was like, in terms of the highway piece of that, right? It was going to be 25.6 billion coming to California. And so if you do the math on that, the valley is 10% of the state, right? So that's 2.5, right? And then Fresno County is about 2.5% of the valley, 25% of the valley. If you do the math, we're going to be looking at somewhere between 60 and 5 million probably, right? Now, how that
Fresno and
money's gonna
Clovis
be
being
is
the big
way
ones
too
to
is
get the
to be
most.
determined, right? So I think a lot of us see that and we think, okay, well, that money will just sort of be a formula. That's not often the case. It's worked out.
They
So,
take their cut.
yeah.
Okay, got it. Look for that.
Thank you, Dave, for your presentation as well. And, just what I have on the screen here is a map, our circulation map that's currently in our general plan. And as Dave, alluded to in his discussion, the primary issue that we face in Selma is how do we move people from east to west and vice versa, from west to east. And there's options. We have on this map, we show the arterials, which are the major roads that carry the highest amount of traffic. And that's indicated in the green. It's kind of hard to tell here, but it's mostly the purple dotted lines. Your DeWolf, your Manning, your Bethel over on the east side. Floral is an arterial. If we start looking at the sort of peripheral arterials around Selma, rather than the ones that cut through the heart of Selma, like Floral and Nebraska, then we can start looking at much more, feasible options to help people move from east to west and vice versa. And, there's been some, in our discussions with developers, some good ideas about how we can address that. And we'll talk about that after our break here, but I do want to move on with the presentation here. One of the big elephants in the room that we've had to sort of confront has been SB 743. And the law that requires that local agencies like the City of Selma assess vehicle miles traveled with regard to the impact of traffic as opposed to using level of service, LOS, which is what we've historically used to measure traffic impacts for projects. So that went into effect in 2020 of July 1st, 2020, excuse me. And what we've faced is uncertainty from developers as to, what are the mitigations that are going to be required to address vehicle miles traveled? Do we have to add more walking trails? Do we have to add a public transit stop? Do we have to add bicycle lanes within our project? But then also, at what point does our project become significant in terms of its impact to traffic and circulation for the community? And what we're doing this month is taking to council the consideration of adoption of Fresno COGS guidelines to help developers basically screen out projects that are small enough to be screened out from addressing these mitigation requirements, but also give them certainty as to what are the metrics that they need to keep in mind, what qualifies as a large project, something that would have a significant impact on the environment and other considerations for CEQA. So, this is one of those things that every community in California is facing at the moment, and it's still kind of fluid. Things are being developed, new ideas and new ways of approaching VMTs are constantly being thrown out there. So we're working with QK, with Fresno COG and other firms to really tailor something to Selma and to Selma's development community that makes sense for us. For the time being, we're going to adopt Fresno COG's model and guidelines, but I think over the long term, we'll have to really look at something that really addresses the traffic patterns here in Selma specifically, rather than at a regional level. Our city engineer, Philip Romero, is going to talk about our stormwater drainage infrastructure and what that looks like, because that often gets overlooked in terms of a significant cost of development, but we do have some information for the council and the public on that. Go ahead, Philip.
Good evening. Good afternoon, Mayor, Council, and staff. I'm sorry, my back's to you. Apologize for that. My name is Philip Romero, and my firm, Yamabe and Horn Engineering, is the acting city engineer. With regards to the storm drain system needs for the city of Selma, and because of the growth of the city, there's a need to prepare a storm drain master plan to handle future development. As you just heard from SKF presentation, there's a fluid document that SKF prepares for future capacity that handles future development. This fluid document or master plan is missing for the storm drain system. After analyzing the existing storm drain system, the existing system does not have the capacity to handle future development, which are the areas outside the city limits and inside the sphere of influence. Without a current storm drain master plan, the future developments have to prepare their own mini storm drain master plans, and this can make new developments longer to process and get projects built. The need for the City of Selma is preparing a storm drain master plan that includes future development, so that the City of Selma can more easily respond to developers' needs with future development. A key component of the storm drain master plan for future developments to get the stormwater to drain to Rockwell Pond. Another item that for the city storm drain system that the city is working on is disconnecting from any storm drainage that is drained into CID ditches and canals. One funding project that is currently in processing is the AB 74 Valley View Storm Drain Project with the State Water Resources Control Board. Phase 1 has been completed, and this project directed drainage along Sheridan Avenue into the Valley View Storm Drain Basin. Phase 2 will be in construction in 2022 and will connect to Phase 1 at Sheridan Street and will direct storm drainage along Valley View Street and McCall Avenue into the same Valley View Storm Drain Basin. There will be a Phase 3 for this project that will be completed in the future and will direct additional storm drain water along Tosh Street up to Front Street. So moving forward, we'll be working with Fernando to move to getting the storm drain master plan complete so the city can better help developers. We know this is a big need for the city. We've been working with some of the developers and we have to get this water to the Rockwell Pond. So basically that's what we've been working on. We've been here for a short time, so we're still trying to analyze the existing system. But at this point, that's where we're at. So I'd be happy to answer any questions.
So just as a historical point, development was shut off in Selma as a result of stormwater, as a result of the drains going into the canals, and CID having a legal problem with that, mounting a legal challenge. Since that time, Selma has gotten itself out of that and had a good partnership with CID. But where are we in terms of taking all that water and moving it to our to Rockwell Pond and our ponding basins? Is that equipment in place for that?
Currently have in place is adequate for our existing development. What we're running into is, especially on the north side of town, we have infrastructure that cannot take any more stormwater. So we're having to require developers to have on-site water storage, which obviously adds cost and sometimes could potentially make projects unfeasible. I think over the long term, what Philip mentioned, the stormwater master plan, which will allow us to obtain additional funding to actually build out our infrastructure so that they can tap into the city's pipes so we can continue to pump it towards Rockwell. But right now where we stand is we have enough to support existing needs, but future needs we need to add to our infrastructure.
And that's how the city initially had the conveyances to get it to the storm water basins, right? Through these grants, through SB1, through the
That's right.
state funding that we have to look at to now include the north part of the city, the development there. That's what you're saying, right?
Yes, okay. That's correct. So I'll move on here on to the other challenge, which is not really a challenge. It's more something that the city needs to consider as we're moving forward. And I think this is the starting point for that conversation, is to update our general plan. The last time it was updated was in 2010. You'll see on the screen some of the desires of the community that came through in that general plan update. For example, the community needs more walkable, neighborhood-oriented subdivisions. Someone needs to maintain its small town atmosphere. More mix of uses needed in the downtown area. More recreational opportunities needed in all areas of town. More senior housing needed throughout town. Expansion of the citywide bike and pedestrian path system. More variety in housing, including recessed detached garages, smaller setbacks, and a mix of housing. new industrial development to be an expansion of existing industrial areas. Selma needs to be more balanced on both sides of State Route 99. Railroad tracks and State Route 99 are aesthetic and noise nuisances, and only 2 State Route 99 interchanges in the community, which leads to congestion. And so some of these staff and the city council are have prioritized and are addressing, but changes have arisen, especially in terms of land use, circulation, social justice and the homeless issue that we need to address in our general plan. And so those are some of the main things that we'll address in a future update once we are able to identify the funding for that type of project. Sorry about that. My sharing just stopped. So this is just a map of our general plan land use element, and it shows, we have that buffer, that ag buffer around the outer perimeter of town. And then we do have, within the central part of town, mostly residential, single family residential with your commercial, your highway commercial and regional commercial over by the 99 on the west side of town. And then you have your residential reserve for larger housing developments, larger lots on the outskirts towards the ag areas as well. And then in the gray areas down towards the southeast part of town, you have your industrial area towards the industrial park there. Selma Crossings includes industrial as well as regional commercial and business reserve. And then you have some, more specifically planned areas on the southwest part of town from past plans, which are not necessarily active, but there is an opportunity to do something with the densities down there on the southwest part of town, which is where Selma is growing. At this point in time, I'd like to give David Fye, who is the executive officer for LAFCO, an opportunity to come up and just kind of share with us his experience with growth, especially with Selma and relative to the communities around us, and sort of maybe identify some opportunities that we have going forward. Hi, Dave.
Hi, Fernando. Mr. Mayor, good to see you. Council, thank you very much for this opportunity. I'm Dave Fye. I'm the executive officer for LAFCO for about 60 more days. And so you'll be talking to my replacement here pretty soon. You can tell them what a great job I did and the level of the performance they have to live up to. And I'd like to let the council know very briefly what LAFCO is all about. LAFCO is a planning and regulatory agency. That's what we do. And if I leave you with one impression, that is LAFCO is boundaries. We don't do land use. That's up to the city. We don't do utilities. That's the city, SKF, your fire department, et cetera, the other service providers. We mentioned CID. What we do is we look at the outer boundary for growth, which is the commission's sphere of influence. And the sphere of influence, in a sense, if you have kids and you buy a pants for them and you roll the cuffs up, that's really the sphere of influence. It's what you're going to grow into. And we look to the city to give us the information about what your expectation is for growth and how much you'll grow and where you'll grow and what services will be provided. And so that's what the sphere of influence is. It's a snapshot at that time that the city and the commission agreed these are the boundaries in the next 20 to 25 years that the city plans on growing. By planning laws, the city's allowed to plan far outside of your sphere of influence, but you can't annex territory until it's in your sphere. So you may have a 50-year growth horizon and shoot out in all directions, but really operationally, LAFCO's concerned with what you'll be doing in that 20 to 25-year horizon. That's what the sphere of influence is. And when you have a sphere of influence, then any determination that the commission takes to be consistent with that. So one of the things that I've tried to do while here at LAFCO is to work closely with the cities to make sure that the cities understand that relationship between what the sphere is and what their growth plans are. I get phone calls every week from cities and special districts on that very topic. And so we want to stay engaged. And I think that's something the commission is going to want to continue. And that is to stay engaged with the cities on a real-time basis and the service providers that a city relies on, so that it's no surprise to the city. Our operation works best when we're integrated soon and frequently with a city's growth plans. We have the sphere of influence, and at time a sphere of influence of a city or special district is going to change. The law requires that LAFCO perform a municipal services review. And that is a stem to stern evaluation of the services that the city provides and its capacity to provide currently, its ability to plan ahead financially and operationally and provide for the growth that that you're expecting. And that's what we look at. And we ask for all your public record and we go through it and we show it back. Is this what you meant? Is this what you said? And sometimes the answer is, no, that's not what we meant at all. And we'll say, well, that's what this document you gave me says. So not necessarily with the city of Selma, but with many cities and special districts, it's just a way of bouncing back what they see as their own self-perception of what their growth is all about. We don't have a dog in the fight, except that we want to make sure that growth is orderly, logical, and efficient. How you plan, what you plan is all up to the city. But we want to make sure that it's balanced with the ability to provide services. And let's get down to annexation. So as the city grows, it annexes land into its corporate boundaries. And our process, I hate to say it, is really simple and it's really quick if it's done well. If it's not done well, it takes a long time, or if it's a complicated project, it takes a long time. So, and by long time, I would say more than 90 days. It could take a couple of years if we're going through the environmental process, et cetera. So early and often, coordination with LAFCO staff, have us on your request for comments early in a project, and we will begin the process. We'll start a file, we'll start calling, we'll have meetings and make sure that when your application comes to us, we have all the data that we need to make this as simple as possible. And one last thing I would say that would be unique to your operation at the city, not necessarily to LAFCO, but one way of keeping your operation as seamless as possible is annexation planning. And what that means is make sure that your community is involved, the neighbors are involved, the development community is involved, so that when they come to you or come to your staff and they say, you know, I've got this piece of property, it's a couple hundred yards from the city limit. Well, I want that light bulb to come off. Well, it's got to be contiguous. And have you reached out to that property that's between you and this proposed tentative map is? And so feeling, as you already do for the community, but in terms of annexation, make sure that when those offers come in, you're in a position to have a pretty good idea about how you have to piece it together. We don't do islands unless it's a public, like a wastewater plant or a landfill or an airport. It's not a feasible annexation unless it's a use. So have a feeling when people come in and start talking, have a sense of what the community is looking at, how essentially the temperature of development out there, and make sure that when the time comes and the project comes to the city council, you've given your staff the ability and to tell you how things look and how feasible that project is. I don't want that to come to the commission. My commission is very reluctant to do the job of the city council and to start to parse winners and losers. So that's something we'd like to see done at the local level where you have control and your general plan is being implemented. By the time it comes to us, let's make it as simple as possible. But that means there's been a lot of homework and a lot of cooperation between our staffs. Thank you very much.
Quick question, Director 5. First, thanks for all your service to LAFCO, taking it to where it is. You'll be missed. And then also, when the city does redo a general plan, how much interaction should there be with LAFCO on the general plan?
I would say as much as you'd have with, say, SKF or CID or the other.
And how much of a role do you usually play in general plan amendments?
On the advice side, we don't have a direct interaction. We're prohibited by law from exercising any kind of land use authority. So it's mostly in terms of process to make sure that as the plan is moving forward, as your planning process is moving forward, we're advised. Any kind of red flags that we see, we let your staff or your consultant team know. And ultimately, it's the goal that when your application comes to our office, we're familiar with the lay of the land, we're familiar with the characteristics, and it's anything that we might have concerns about, timing, boundaries, configuration, services. You'll know about that before you submit to the.
Got it. So word to the wise, stay in touch with LAFCO during any amendments. Thank you.
All right, thanks.
Thank you, Dave. Much appreciated. Mr. Mayor, I know we're well behind our scheduled break. I don't know if you wanted to take this opportunity to.
I
do
think
that.
we are ready for a 5-minute break. Let's take that break and we'll come back and continue. Stay on time. We can all get out at a reasonable time on a Friday afternoon. So that they can have their input, right? So, yeah. So Fernando's going to kind of move it from there. Because you could kind of tell they're still. Okay, if everybody could just take their seats, we'll get started again. Okay, we're back in session. We'll move back to Fernando.
Thank you, Mayor. In the interest of time, I'm going to skip over a few things that I had planned on addressing because I know there are folks in the community who are short for time and also want to provide their input. But so I'm gonna, if you give me the opportunity to just summarize, I'm gonna go through the rest of my slides here. So we have another issue that we have in town is park space. You can see from this map, the purple area, the north side of Selma is pretty deficient in parks, which is deficient generally is defined as a lack of green space or park space within a 10-minute walk of residents. And so that's kind of the area where we're sort of hurting in town, but we'll address those hopefully in future workshops and discussions. Funding for infrastructure has come up. EIFDs is certainly an option that Selma is not eligible for at the moment, but we're working on that. CFDs, also known as Melrose tax districts, is something that is certainly available to us as a tool for financing. We're working with one particular developer on a CFD at the moment, so hopefully we can continue to pursue that avenue. And state housing mandates, we were going to have a presentation as to recent legislation, but in the interest of time, we're going to skip over that and we can add that to a future agenda. And then with regard to city staffing levels, I think it's pretty clear that from the council that development is a priority for the city. And as such, some key positions within the planning division, community development department, and specifically planning, engineering, public works, and other key functions, it's necessary to beef up our staffing and our operations to make that process more smooth. So hopefully, the city council can take a look at this going forward, in which I think we've received some very positive indications that that is the case. And we wanted to let the development community know that we are looking at that possibility. So we had our break, and just before we get into the input from the development community, Ralph and I, as we've spoken to individual developers, some really good ideas have come up, and I've just listed a few here for if anyone is here from the development community that would like to expand on these ideas, feel free. We invite you to do so. We've heard from Mr. Nelson, who's talked about Stillman Street development, and that's been an idea that's been also liked by other folks who have sort of the same ideas. Selma Grove and Rockwell Pond, definitely the synergies between those two developments. East-west circulation, we talked about that a little bit with Caltrans and COG, and in terms of maybe changing signage on the 99 to direct people to Highland as a sort of East Floral exit to get people off of the west side of Floral coming off the 99. We talked about the peripheral major arterials being an option for circulation. And then the 2nd Street, Nebraska, that's one idea that was brought forth by a developer as a potential major arterial that could be developed as an alternative to Floral. And then, we have some old specific plans, McCall Avenue specific plan that could potentially be applied to other major city thoroughfares in terms of beautifying the community. So improving the presentation of Selma for folks who are coming off of the freeway. You talk about Whitson, 2nd Street, Floral itself, McCall Avenue is definitely one of our major thoroughfares, but we need to kind of expand that beautification to other parts of town. Development incentives, if anybody wants to bring up ideas about how the city can consider creative avenues to spur development in terms of incentives. And then I think one thing we've already heard is a review of the development impact fees and how that could support future development. So at this point, and actually before we get to the developer input, I wanted to end sort of my presentation with a positive outlook for Selma, because we do have lots of things going for us, which is evident from the attention that we're getting from lots of different angles. And one of those things is strong housing demand. I mean, there's a really strong demand for housing. The vacancy rates around not just the Valley, but Fresno County and specifically Selma are really low, which means that people are looking for housing. You know, there's significant funding for affordable housing from the state and feds that we can definitely take advantage of. There's a strong interest in public and private partnerships. The mayor mentioned American Rescue Plan Act funding that we could potentially direct, you know, if this council decides to do so, towards infrastructure and other initiatives. Downtown bid formation and the downtown strategic plan is underway, so we'll have a greater focus on the downtown businesses and development there. And community-wide focus in general on development as a priority. I think that's a really strong one, strong point, because right now is the momentum is building, and I think we are in a really good position to take advantage and leverage on that momentum. And most of that momentum comes from developer interests such as yourselves and your desire to develop Selma and to build here and to make this a better place to live. So with that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to the folks in the room and on Zoom. If you have any ideas or suggestions or general comments that you'd like to provide for staff or the council, feel free to come up to the podium and share with us. Thank you.
That red light should be on. There you go.
Good afternoon, Dwight Nelson. Question, the Jackson School property, there's, I don't know, 15 or 20. Jackson School in McCall, it's been vacant for the last 40 years. And you're saying, oh, we need more park space. Why has that never been turned into soccer fields in conjunction with the city and the school district? That land, which has basically just been a dirt field the past 40 years. Not have to buy it. You could probably work something out with the school district to actually develop this, plant grass and put a sprinkler system in. Kids would have a great place to play soccer. Very little money. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nelson. And maybe we'll have the school district at a future meeting.
Absolutely.
Robertson and staff, thank you guys. Valley and strong desire to build homes. Discussing with some landowners here about 2 years now, having conversations with the city staff and various about developing land here in the city, and have come across some roadblocks which have been presented and discussed here today. I would like to emphasize and reiterate some of those roadblocks. Council and city staff to work together to maybe pass those. Those three are sewer, avenue. In terms of VMT, I think what you were looking for is currently processing, I believe it's a citywide analysis or an EIR to analyze VMT up with a fee that the developer would be charged per unit to mitigate for VMT. Although we don't like fees, are something that we can calculate. Currently, we have no way of calculating VMT. And there was also discussion of financing districts for infrastructure improvements like sewer on Dainuba Avenue. And I know that there have been discussions with developers like KB Home about a CFD, which is one solution to that problem. However, I would like to emphasize the downside to the two taxes that the homeowner would have to pay, which purchasing power that they have when they go to qualify. Developer or home builder do to offset that, we reduce the purchase price because they're only able to afford so much of a monthly payment. I don't think that the city of Selma wants to see lower prices in the city for their homes. Of course, everybody likes. That's the downside to using a financing district and placing the burden of that financing district on a limited number of homes. So again, if we're asking for input from the development community, large, broader CFD for the entire northeast sewer area, zone of benefit would be created that for all of the parcels and the future development that would occur, that would participate together so that the first developer that it goes in isn't overburdening his home buyers with a very large 1.9% tax rate. I think that would be very key to help unlock the Northeast. Finally, the storm drain map. Allow us to even calculate and plan for what we do with our.
Thanks.
Andrew.
Hi,
We
good
do have the
afternoon,
school
Mayor
district.
and council members. Yeah, I'm really very pleased that you guys have this meetings and going over with the different agencies. And what we need to do as a developer, as a business owner here, this is great. I would gonna say a few things. The staffing, senior planner needed at the city for a while. And that's what where's the lockdown on these LARA projects are slowing down because we don't have a full-time planner here at the city, which is will not cost on your general funds. It can be cost goes to the developers and other people's that I think the city does need a full-time planner. And that's what one of the LARA projects are not working out. And the second thing for the general plan 2035, but like we discussed on a master plan, we are lack on the master plan for the Cal water, for the sewer, and storm drainage. And that one city, we need to be work on it in order to make all these developments in the future. And like we discussed previously, there's some bonds and maybe city needs to be looked into it. How can we bring these infrastructures to the town and make it work? Thank you.
Good afternoon. I don't know if that's it. Can you hear me on this? My name is Timothy Jones. I'm the owner developer of Selma Crossings. First of all, I'd like to thank you for putting this together. I think it's a really wise decision on your part. I'd also like to thank your staff who's been very helpful. We've had a lot of interest in the project and we've started to have meetings and trying to put things together. I will say I was a little surprised it wasn't on your list of projects since it's fully entitled at 3.4 million square feet, but I'm sure it'll get there eventually. A couple things. I think Selma is uniquely poised to capture a lot of positive development that can be done. We did a study. We hired a company called DPFG, and what they do is they evaluate the value of a project. What is it going to return in tax dollars? And Selma Crossings at full build out returns $9.6 million to the city of Selma. Now it comes with costs, right? You've got fire, you've got other things that have to be done. But those sorts of evaluations, as you're contemplating where to go and what to do, you should be thinking about it. You're a business, as you know, and as a business, you've got the ability to capture a lot of development that could add a tremendous amount of value to the city, that could do a lot of projects and do a lot of things that would help the city become what it can be. And so I just suggest that as part of your overarching plan, be thinking about the economic addition of these projects. That's one point. Second is, one thing I've learned over the years is that this is not a zero-sum game. The success of any one developer in your community, it will be the success of all of them and the success of the homeowners, because they add value, they add opportunity, they add jobs, they add growth, which can be good and bad, but if you manage it properly, it's usually pretty good. And I say that because I have a lot of fellow developers in the crowd here or on the phone. And I don't think any of us have to be concerned that the other might be successful. That's a fool's position. Because if any are successful, they'll all be successful. And, you know, I can look at Dwight Nelson as a car dealer. You know, you get one car dealership out in the middle of nowhere and they do okay. You get as many as he has and they all do great because you bring people from further away to be there. So I think it's important that you give thought to how you put all that together. SKF, one of the things that happened to us recently is we've got to get our services lined up if we're going to bring in. So we met with SKF and we had a call with them. Then we had a call with them in the city. And there's a left-hand, right-hand thing going on there because SKF says we're in services and the city says we're in infrastructure. But then when the question comes up, all right, well, if I have to oversize, because we're going to affect that Clarkson station, lift station, if we have to oversize, how are we going to get reimbursed? Are we going to get credits? So we're not oversizing, putting a bunch of money into something for future use, neither getting reimbursed nor getting credits for the fees we have to pay now. I think you have to figure out how the two of you are going to work together because that, you know, it becomes a stalemate, you know, that we can't move past. So I think that's another thing that you've got it on your radar. It's obvious from the conversation that took place earlier, and it's not lost on you. The EIFD concept, we were one of the first in the state of California to employ the EIFD concept. We did it in the Riverstone project in Madera, and it's slated to generate about $50 million. For the infrastructure in the area. Now that includes, you know, 12 and 41 freeway improvements. It includes a whole bunch of things. We did it. It was very efficient. It was easy to I realize that you've got some impediments you've got to overcome, but that's a very handy tool that could be utilized to help all over the city with those infrastructure type issues that you're grappling with. Anyhow, that's what I have to say. I'm happy to answer any questions. We're really motivated to move the project forward and look forward to doing so. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Jones.
Mr. Mayor, City Council, Danny Seremian, citizen of Selma. What I like to talk about is we've got all this growth that's coming. Problem is circulation, traffic. For those of us that live here, we deal with it every day. We figure out a way. Well, hey, we got two choices. You got Second Street or you got Floral. Floral happens to be so clogged up. What can we do to fix that? Besides the future, our project, 25 to 2,600 homes, probably what's the average, 4? So you got to figure that's another 10,000 cars that are going to be. I talked to Ralph. We could use Island off ramp, left turn to go on. Caltrans is looking into that. The other thing, possibility of taking guys into the freeway, that as a thoroughfare, Mountain View, which would help Mr. Growth. We're butt up against Fowler, up against Kingsburg. Our project to the east got us to the west. By putting a 4-lane off the freeway, turn, also incorporate another 4-lane using Bethel, our side of town, Timberwood that need Prezzo or Visalia could use Bethel to go to Mountain View or go to Manning, not have to cross Pearl or Another possibility with an alternate for Floral. White has this plan for Stillman, and there's a lot of development happening on the west side of the freeway. We also, or on the west side, one west and Stillman off as a passageway around. A lot of the traffic. I get tired of coming off the freeway at 5 o'clock and you can't even get into the intersection. The first stage going to Highland, kind of almost a no-brainer. But that was just my thoughts. Because, once we get, we don't know what year our subdivision is going to be. 2,600 homes, that's another 10,000 people. I don't think that our town can support that kind of traffic going through. Anyway.
Hopefully you guys can hear me okay. I wanted to make sure I go last and give everyone an opportunity here to come up, but I wanted to come up. My name is Myra Campa. Hopefully I'm a familiar face to you guys. I'm a representative for Senator Melissa Hurtado, so it's a pleasure to be here. Hello, Mayor. Hello, council members. Thank you for having me here. I want to give a special thank you to Fernando and Ralph for inviting me and sending the invitation. It's a great opportunity for me as a representative to come in and really see what's going on in Selma. And I wanted to let you guys know that I am working with Selma staff to address some of the issues that have been brought to our attention. I had the pleasure of having a ride along around City of Selma and getting an idea of the development that's happening here. I'm trying to help out with other issues regarding some planning development issues here in City of Selma. And it was also brought to my attention something with the sewer infrastructure. So I'll definitely be touching base with the staff here in Selma so I can see what I can do to help. I know I wanted to come here today and just let you guys know that we are working at our office for a new form or a new link possibly to send out to the respective cities in SD14 so that the cities can they can bring any legislative ideas or budget or legislative ideas that the senator might be able to champion in the 2022 legislative session. So that is going to be available soon. I am hoping to send that information out to the city managers. I think if that's a good point of reference for the city. And that way you guys can put in your request for the senator for the next session.
Yeah, I know in the past, the assembly member and state senator have sent their representatives to our city to discuss our budget asks with a couple of council members, city manager and deputy city manager.
They would have direct meetings with you guys. Yeah, I'd be happy to do that too. Happy to work with you guys.
And just one of the issues you brought up that we could use help with is the EIFD, right? Our RDA hasn't been closed out and we really need help from our state elected representatives to help us get that RDA closed out at the state level.
And I think that was something that was also brought to my attention and I'm currently working on it. You guys have a lobbyist, Jason Siegman with Criscom. He and I have already touched base regarding the EIFD and your guys' desire to establish that here in Selma. So it might be, we can talk about that at a different meeting, but it has
Because you were
been
the
brought to our
developer, they got
attention.
50 million at the Fieldstone and EIFD funding for infrastructure. So it's definitely, we wouldn't get anywhere near that, but in terms of scale and proportion, it would really help Selma with future developments.
Okay.
And that's standing in the way.
All right, we'll schedule a meeting with you guys and I'll be happy to sit down and talk more about it. I'm glad I'm here. Any more questions for me? I'm happy to answer. You guys.
Thank you, Myra. We have anyone on Zoom? Anyone on the phone who would like to topic today?
As a reminder to everyone that we have on Zoom, please use your raise your hand feature and we will add you to the meeting queue. For those of you that are calling in, please use *9 to raise your virtual hand. I'm going to say it one more time because I don't see any hands raised. So just to confirm to all of the callers that we have on Zoom, as a reminder, please use your raise your hand feature and we will add you to the meeting queue. Or if calling in by phone, please use *9 and we will add you to the meeting queue. Mayor Robertson, we have no callers on Zoom with their hands raised at this time.
Fernando?
Afternoon, Mayor. Small investor, we invested here in the Valley, Dainuba, Selma, Fresno, the Bay Area. And I see the need for rents. And we have some land that we could probably use for building tiny homes. Well, there's a high demand for rent and there's nothing here in Selma or in the Valley for low rents. That if we can work together and build some tiny homes for affordable tiny homes for renting. This will help. They're in the borderline to go homeless, or they can get into a tiny home and be there for a year or so, and then until they get their stuff ready, they can move out or buy a house or get it, So my point is this, that I have a property on Highland that we wanted to see if we can use that. It's usable to either, of course, change the zoning and all that to build at least start with 50 tiny homes. That will help the community. I bring you this opportunity to see if we can make it happen, because as I've been seeing how bad the renting is going, and the price for a 1-bedroom right now is over $1,000 if you can find any right now, and it's just going to get worse. So instead of having a lot of people, and they're already on the borderline, and we're going to have a big population of homeless because they can't rent, they can't afford to rent. I think the tiny homes will be released for them that can help. I'd like to see if you guys want to entertain something like that. I have the land and working on, with fundings and stuff like that. So change the zoning so we can be able to do something like that. Questions? Thank you.
Mayor Robertson, if I could just conclude my presentation. Really what the purpose is, our interim city manager, Ralph, mentioned at the beginning of the meeting. Our hope for this discussion relative to council's direction is really to get the conversation started about the general plan update and the timing of that, the funding. It doesn't have to be decided on now, but also potentially additional focused workshops on some of the topics that we've discussed today, because as we've seen in terms of the amount of time that we took up discussing these topics, they're very in-depth and very broad challenges that we're facing, and bringing in some of the folks that are in this room into more focused conversations I think would be really helpful. But at the end of the day, we would love to hear council and your direction and your feedback as to how to proceed with these ideas. Thank you.
I really agree. You know, we do need more meetings on this. It's really important. At some point, you hit a point of diminishing returns, you know, and I think we hit that. And I think we need another meeting and a meeting after that to keep getting in more detail on this. But a really important topic. I want to thank the interim city manager and the deputy city manager for putting this all together. And most of all, for all of you developers coming out, you're the backbone of our community. You're the future of our community, and we thank you very much. And would council like to say anything before we adjourn the meeting?
I would like to say thank you again to the entire developers and staff and our citizens of Selma. This is, like we said, we talked about, this is one of many meetings we are going to have. We face challenges, of course, but through these types of meetings is what's going to help us get there, and what we can find, you know, like grants or funding. We have to nail it down to what we can do to help infrastructure, because we know that's a problem. And we know, of course, like Mr. Sarimian mentioned, the challenges we have with traffic. That's another issue. So with your input as well is going to help us make wise and better decisions. And we really appreciate any information that you can give us, along with our city manager, our deputy city manager. You know, working together is what's going to help, you know. And I think, like we said, putting all our heads together is we're going to be much more prosperous, and we're going to get there. But again, we need all of us to come together. So thank you again for coming today. I know it's one of many. We'll have a few more, and hopefully we'll have some solutions by then and we can move forward. Thank you.
First of all, I'd like to thank all the developers and all the city staff for putting up everything that the presentation it was wonderful. It's actually a step in the right direction. I was elected about 2.5 years ago, and one of the major issues I felt the city of Selma had was infrastructure and no growth. And when we start talking about growth, we don't talk about growth as it's going to happen right now. If we talk about right now, the city council itself has, in their own way, to know that we have to forecast, right? As a business owner, and I heard the word, you know, hey, we're in business. Well, there has to be a rate of return. We have to have a residual. What's the residual in your investment? And I want to tell you that we the city council here have decided, and Mr. Mayor, we've all talked and said we're here for this, and we're all going to work together. But I do want to bring up some issues that need to be said, because we all need to understand what we did 10, 12 years ago. What we did not do with SKF, hold them accountable, is causing us some rift right now. But it's really for us, the council, to bring it up and say, we're here to do it now. Not talk about what we didn't do in the past, but to tell you that, you know what, this meeting is a significant, it shows that we are looking and we are hearing you guys, but at the same time, we have our own house cleaning to do. And that house cleaning is buttoning up SKF. Like the mayor said, we have to get someone to help us with the EIFD. We have to. If it's that we all go to go speak to the people up there at Sacramento, then that's what we got to do. But I want to leave this meeting letting all you know that we are very, very, very interested in future developments of Selma. And we need to let you know that we are a business. The city of Selma is a business. Not building and not planning in the city of Selma is negative growth in the city of Selma. It helps Fowler and helps Kingsburg. But we want you guys all to know infrastructure is very important. We need to start talking about how we're going to set the planned growth pattern for the city of Selma, for the future of Selma. Selma itself has to invest in Selma. That in turn gives you guys the ability to grow. So I just want you guys to know that I thank you guys for being here. This is the first step, but at the same time, there is going to be a day we're all going to talk about what are our concerns and how we're going to set the city. And we would love for you guys to come and talk to us, but we have to set the motion. We have to set the foresight, and we have to be committed to stick to that plan. So I thank you guys and I thank the council for doing this.
I want to thank staff for bringing this meeting together, this workshop together. It's a long time coming, like it's a long overdue process. When I ran for council, this is exactly what I wanted to, this is exactly my vision that I had, is for everybody to come in as the developers, as the SKF, as, you know, all the stakeholders, pretty much, you know, all the stakeholders, and let's get in one room and see what our vision is for Selma, because there's so much potential. And, you know, the last 10 years, yeah, whatever, you know, whatever reasons we weren't growing, I know we were short on staff and everything, but now is the time that we have all the players, all the key players in place. We have a lot of recruitment that we have to do, but I think the key players have a vision for the city of Selma. And I'm, you know, I'm really honored to be up here to be part of that vision. And this is a great start. And I think that in the past, we've all been on the same freeway. And we all had the same destination, but we were just not in the same lane. You know, we all were doing our own things, and sometimes we have to get in each other's lanes and get in the car together and let's drive so we can, you know, meet that destination and get to that goal. But I'm really excited, and I thank everybody for coming today, because it's a step in the right direction, and it is growth. I know we have, again, you know, some challenges with the EIFDs and all these other things, but I think that working together, that we're going to be, you know, better for it. And we're gonna, I see so much growth, and this is exactly what I envisioned when I ran. So thank you again, everybody, for coming.
Yeah, I'm gonna really, ditto to everybody, you know, the councilman said, but what I see out here is the unity. And it's so neat to see, you know, it's like Mr. Jones says, you know, if one person does good, all of us should be doing good. So help each other. And like I say, you're gonna help the city grow and watch us all work together. And that's what we need, you know, believe in each other and go the same direction, because we don't want, you know, to say, hey, I'm gonna do better than you. Because if we go all the same direction, we're gonna go very far. Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your participation. Okay, with that, any other communications at this point? We will adjourn. Thank you, everyone, for coming.